This episode of Arrays of Living discusses let it go. In my book, Aladdin Carpets, the term stuff harbored inside that eventually sabotages, essentially, or shites, was introduced. Shites are all the crap we tend to hold on to, literally and figuratively. And by holding on to, I mean to the extent where it is in your pores, it's in our psyche, and every aspect of our core, us, exudes our shites. We all have a hard time shaking our shites off. They have been with us for so long that many even forget that they are there, surrounding us, pinning us, and patterning our behavior in ways that don't serve our best interests. And that's the bottom line. Our shites truly are our crap, and they don't serve our better interests. And that's something that you need to understand. And that's why I love the word to describe them and what they stand for. Stuff harbored inside that eventually sabotages. Now, let's put everything into perspective. So I'll give you an example. After witnessing my dad abuse my mother and experiencing intense fear and anger over that behavior, it was only in my teenage years that I got to understand just how embedded the damage had gone from me witnessing the many episodes. And here's how it came to my attention. A school friend, Terry, bless his heart, jokingly swiped his hand across my face on the cheek. A light, like just jokingly, just think of teenagers skylarking around is the word we would use. And he just did this kind of like light slap across onto my cheek. And before I knew what was happening, I had returned his gesture with the most intense slapback that left both him and I speechless. And those around us who witnessed the interaction was left with their jaws literally dropping. Not only was it uncharacteristic of me, it was literally instinctive and reactive. That's how the response was. Before his hand had actually even fully left my cheek, I was responding in kind, but with such a force, that's what left us jaw-dropping. And I followed up, I apologized profusely. I felt so bad. I was lost at that young age as to how I could even make sense of it for him. Of course, nobody knew or spoke of the abuse that was going on, depending on who knew, and certainly Terry and his family would not have known. And it was shortly after that I left the gathering in a complete state of heightened emotions, because I knew why it happened. What I could not understand for many, many years was why my mom had endured my dad and had made a personal commitment. At least I did to myself. I made a personal commitment to never allow any person to hit me as I saw my dad hit my mom. So this seamlessly light slap that was done in jest from Terry brought out all those angry sentiments that I had buried, and he got the full brunt of my response. I am so thankful. I mean, seriously, thank goodness that today I can speak of this and marvel at how far I have come. And I certainly hope that Terry can one day listen to this and gain understanding to forgive my adolescent response. Even if he remembers, I am so sorry, Terry. Because you see, I had to work through my shites to arrive here. The amazing thing is that in working through them, I came to realize that my dad was only with us. Listen to this. My dad was only with us for 5 years before my mom finally kicked him to the curb. And she did that based on me and my sister going and speaking with her and saying, what are you doing with your life? You deserve better. You deserve more. And she kicked him to the curb. But when she did, it had only been 5 years that he had been with us and living with us on a day-to-day basis. And for me, as even in my child mind, those 5 years felt like 20 years. And he was not even an everyday abuser. So now imagine the mental impacts for all the various different life situations that run longer. And my message to you today is that shites are real, and our shites needs our attention. Yours needs your attention because it's directing and guiding your life. If you're not paying attention to them, they are guiding how you think, how you speak, how you take on other people's thoughts and impressions. They are with you. So they are real and they need your attention. And my message in sharing this is because, and you'll come to see why I call that out. 5 years of my life is all that my dad was with us. And the tentacles that those 5 years created in me, the embedding that those 5 years of close to trauma, I can't call it trauma because I got over it, but I think at that time it was probably pretty traumatic. And I managed to get over it. As I said, thank you. Talk about gratitude. I am forever grateful for being able to work through this stuff and be here today and speak to you about it from a point of strength, from a point of helping you face yours. So this episode, Let It, and I put it capitals, go, is all about surrendering and truly moving beyond the past and beyond any negative emotions they carry. To let those things go involves many things, one of which is awareness, one of which is truth, one of which is mindfulness, and another is flow. But they're not all the things. They're just some of the things that needs to come into play to get you beyond your shites. You see, when we face certain negatively impactful situations, we go into shock. Then we have a reaction. We react. And eventually, we then push it aside to better cope. And then we may deal with aspects of it or not, depending on how it arises. There will become triggers that trigger you back to that moment and trigger you back to that reaction. And it starts to permeate our lives. These things will also enrage, even if it turns into internalized rage. And that is the worst form of rage, because at what point or in what way will it eventually come out? For us to recognize, become aware that they are sitting there and really take action to deal with them and to get beyond them. And sometimes we think this term of success with all these material things around us is getting beyond, and it isn't. And it isn't. When do we see, tragedy erupt in suicides or in self-cutting or in all of these other things playing out with people that are seemingly made it, that are seemingly successful, and we wonder why they're not happy? I'm telling you, I truly believe they're not happy because of the shites they're dealing with that are there, that they're not dealing with actually. They exist, but they're not dealing with them. So they come back to haunt, and it doesn't matter what part of the economic scale you're on. Low income, middle income, doesn't matter. They wreak havoc. There's stuff harbored inside that eventually sabotages. They wreak havoc in your life if you don't deal with them. Now, the brain has a lot to do with all of this because it works to protect us. Because then we tend to say things like, I'm okay, or I don't care, when we really aren't okay, and we do in fact care. If you pay attention, you will see that we tend to say dismissive words like this when the hurt or impact is at its worst or deepest. So I like to pay attention to those dismissive words, because they really hold a poignancy of the depth of the hurt, of the depth of the impact, because it's us desperately grasping for a way forward, a way to remove ourselves from the heightened emotions we are feeling. And like I called out some stark ones from my youth and young days and childhood, but it happens throughout our life. Think of the co-worker, that passive-aggressive co-worker that says something. Think of the friend that betrayed you. That's where all this stuff comes from. So it's not just one point in your life and it goes away. It's maturing ourselves in our mindfulness. That's where mindfulness comes in. Training our mindfulness, growing, maturing to a point where we've dealt with it and we're dealing with it. And without intervention, it will eventually be pushed into the furthest regions of our memoirs, and we will be lulled into a false sense of awesomeness. Here comes, that false sense of awesomeness. Another word for that is facade. We start to create these facades of being okay, of not caring. And the hurt is in there just festering, and it comes out in all sorts of health problems, right? Cancer and, high blood pressure and nervousness. It comes out in all sorts of other ways. I happen to believe that we must first acknowledge the situation, whatever the situations are, that they occurred. And we have to get into the awareness I mentioned earlier. And we have to be intentional, actually move with the intention to not sweep it under the carpet. Example, yes, my grandmother did this to me. I'm giving awareness to the situation. I'm not playing ostrich. I'm not pretending it didn't happen. Yes, my father hit my mother. Yes, that happened. Your turn now. You next. Place your it's on the table. And then you must face how each of those it's that you placed on the table made you feel. I mean, really made you feel. I'm not asking for the public saving face, feel good facade. I mean the raw, in the moment feeling you had when it occurred. And I'm not asking you to do that to get angry and go out for revenge and take it out on others. I'm asking you to deal with it. I'm asking you to look your it's on the table and say they happened. But not only did they happen, here's how they made me feel. And the one I put on the table with my grandmother is a situation where I arrived at her home. I walked through the door and I said, "Good morning. Hi, Gran. How you doing?" And she responded, looking me dead in the eyes, serious as can be. "God, you're black and ugly." That was my response. "Morning, Gran. How you doing?" So you got to put your it on the table, look at it, and acknowledge it happened. Acknowledge how you felt when it happened. And if it truly is your it, you will recall the moment. Because here's something really important to know and recognize. Letting go does not mean you will forget. It does not mean forgetting. You can forget to a point and forgive a situation and go beyond it, which is where I want you to do. I want you to move beyond these things, learn from them, help them shape who you are in very positive ways, meaning I would never do that to another person because I know how it feels. Meaning shape you in positive ways where I'm here on this podcast sharing those stark moments with you because I need you to understand. I understand because I need you to know your worth. I need you to know you are magnificent and perfect and that nobody should take that knowledge away from you. Nobody should do that. And if my dealing with my shites gets me to the strength and this point that I can be here and speak to you and teach you and learn and share and have an impact, a positive impact in your life, then I am grateful for that situation because it shaped me in a very positive way. So letting go does not mean you will forget. It means you get to the ability to move beyond, which equates, as far as I'm concerned, to forgiveness. Before I podcast before any of this. I was to the point where I could still interact with my gran in a very loving way. Because all that let it go means is you are letting go of the negative emotions associated with the situation. And it's important to get there. It's important to do that because doing so will stop the power that situation, your it, has to control your today actions and reactions to same or similar situations. Like me, you will be able to share the story, and for the most part, in a calm and collected way. Being greeted like that, it made me feel like shit, despite knowing that the statement was false. I knew that wasn't true. It still made me feel really, really bad. So now you try it. When this occurred, I felt ... Whatever your it is, whatever the situation was, then get to your truth. And the truth is, because you need to get honest with yourself, no one else. Lift up the tail of the carpet, see the crap that is there, and start to clean the space. Clean even what is left on the carpet. Try to get that all remnants from off the carpet threads and clean the floor, clean the space. That's what truth is. Get honest with yourself. No one else has to be around. You just have to get honest with yourself and face it. No one else. Face how you feel and how the experience affected you, or in what way you might have contributed to it. Because sometimes we contribute to our own its. I'm not saying all the time, sometimes we do. That's just being honest. So here we go again. I'm going to show you how I do this. When my gran called me black and ugly, again, I felt like absolute shit. Because the upbeat temperament I arrived with and extended my greeting to her with literally dropped like a sack of stones. Forget potatoes, like a sack of stones. The mood I had come in with, lighthearted, happy, everything changed. My mouth felt like it was hanging open. I felt weighted down, and it was a hurtful, deeply hurtful experience. I was in shock and disbelief that someone could return another person's arrival greeting in that way, let alone my grandmother. I was stunned. Using my own lived experience, as I just shared, you get a sense just how challenged I was as a child. Those challenges started as young as age 8. So I've had many, many, many years to work through my shites. And as I said, thank God I have. And yet, very recently, here's the thing, because I need you to understand how deeply embedded these things are. Very recently, in my own up-leveling, I discovered that remnants still remained, and they were there actually having impacts for the present mission I'm on. Hey, human, that's me. I'm human and you are. We all are. You're not alone. Self-doubt, hesitancy, excuses began to circle. And I was no longer familiar with those emotions. I had worked through them. But guess what? I was elevating. I was up-leveling. I was becoming stronger. And as I up-level, new things came into play. New challenges came into play. I was going in to an area I was unfamiliar with. That's what happens when you grow. And all of a sudden, my shites started to come out. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. Oh, I can't. Oh, I'll do it later. All because, and it wasn't fair. Let me make that understand. It wasn't fair. It was self-doubt. They began to circle. So you can imagine my surprise to learn just how deep those wounds went. And I have to tell you, I really do. Transparent as I always am. I actually swore when I realized where the current blockage was stemming from. After all those bloody years? Really? After all the hard work on myself? The intimate relationship I built with myself? This one shite from childhood related to my grandmother still had enough spark and juice to sabotage me? So when I tell you I get it, I do. I truly, truly do. And yet here I am urging you to let it, capital I, capital T, go. Get beyond your Achilles heel. Break the shackles to thrive, really thrive in your life. Something important to also understand is that shites is only one aspect. Another is recognizing your spiritual foundations. And for me, that is my God within. Based on my teachings, I believe that God resides within each of us. I happen to consider that divinity is not found external, but rather internal and actually emanates outward. That's my belief. That's what I teach. That's my Divintastical Living. Whatever your spiritual beliefs may be, and I respect them, build that relationship and surrender. I can honestly say I am revisiting this right now, but at a different level due to my evolving and up-leveled mindset. The Jenn that was, the Jenn that slapped Terry back is not the Jenn that is speaking to you today, is not the Jenn that is here now. I have fundamentally changed, and I'm deliberately and consciously expanding that change, that metamorphosis, based on an unknown journey of discovery. I say unknown because the journey is underway in complete blind faith, armed only with my big, bodacious dreams. So when my shites start to spark, the first thing different that I realize, I recognize it. That's the first difference. I now recognize it. And then I do what I need to do. I do all the work I need to do to get beyond it again. They're remnants, small little things. They're not big like before. There was a time I could not even tell you this story. I couldn't even speak about it. I was in tears. I would be crying. I would be thinking, and it would impact how I looked on myself and how I felt and all this stuff. It doesn't now. So they're just little remnants that come up every now and then. But I tell you this. Here's why I speak to it. Because I need you to know how deeply embedded it goes. I need you to understand the damage that they do. And I need you to understand that only you can clean that up. Now, the situations I shared stem from childhood, but they influence my thoughts, my expectations for myself, and my response to social interactions. Your its will cascade in interesting ways, depending on what they are. Some good and some not so good. What I did was step in and determine what impacts I will keep and which ones I will discard as not serving me well. Because if I am the orchestrator, if you are the orchestrator, if I am the conductor of my own symphony and you are the conductor of your own symphony, then we are creating the notes and the songs as we go, or we should be. So I'm here to tell you, I am creating me in this one life I have right now by emanating me from the inside out. To do that and to continue doing that is only possible if I let, and if you let, our its go. And the same of all that holds true for you, whatever your it may be. And you will have to check in with every level of growth you achieve, because the remnants will show up from time to time. So I want you to pause and consider where you are right now. Are you beyond the past? Really beyond the past? Meaning you are not rehashing from a point of pain, but are sharing from a point of revelation and wisdom and a point of love for yourself. Love for how these things shaped and made you, and love for others. And you want these lessons to be extended to others so they can deal with them quicker, just like I'm doing now. And when you can get to the point where there's excitement in you when you share, because you have learned the lessons, can now teach the lessons, and have thrived because of those very lessons, as harsh or hurtful as they may have been. Because only you can do that work, peel the related onions layer by layer by layer, When you decide and commit to let your its go, whatever your its may be for you, and more so, you now infallibly know that everything, every up, every down was done for you, not to you. So what does now look like for you? How do we find ways to grow from really bad or painful lived experiences? Many times it's through community, because in the mix we get to discover we are not alone. And you aren't. I assure you, you're not. It is also by getting beyond. And that means picking ourselves up, dusting ourselves off, facing the truth head on, and including all the emotional baggage that many times come with shites and letting them go. And as always, if you need help with that, reach out using the links in the description, because with my board designated, I am accountable to help you in some of these life struggles. And I can, guaranteed. So on that note, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this episode of Arrays of Living. And please be sure to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. You will also find in the description below my email address should you want to reach out, and I am happy if you do. And just to be sure, it's Jenn at youareworthmore.co, and worth more you definitely are. And lastly, also see the link that will allow you to schedule a meet and greet with me. And that's an opportunity for me to meet you and you to meet me, and for us to have a chat. And that would be wonderful and welcoming. So please hit the link and let's set up a meet and greet.